What's happening, folks? Geologist Philip Prince back in the Appalachians today, looking northeast here along Massanutten Mountain in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. We're not here for the mountain today. We are here for the North Fork of the Shenandoah River. And if you have ever looked at a map in this part of the Appalachians, chances are you have taken note of the absolutely incredible meanders of the North Fork of the Shenandoah. The South Fork on the right side of the screen, on the southeast side of Massanutten, it meanders too, but it's not quite as extreme as what you see over there on the North Fork. And indeed, that area that I just drew there, if you drew a straight line along and it's like 10 and a half miles or something like that, the river length over that same distance is about 35 miles. So the river has taken that straight line length and increased it about 3.5 times just by doubling over itself there so many times. Really incredible. I don't think there's any other meanders in the Appalachians that are quite this extreme in terms of their overall shape. There's plenty of meandering bedrock rivers like this one, but this one really stands out. So what's up with this? How does geology control this really unusual river pattern? Got all the tools here going today. Going to do some LiDAR look in here. That always helps to see some of the details in the landscape that may be relevant to understanding this. And in addition to LiDAR, also have a geologic map of Virginia running here. The USGS used to provide these as free downloads. I haven't seen them anymore, but suffice it to say, they're really, really cool. And in a place like the Appalachians where bedrock controls most of the landscape details, it's great to have a tool like this. You just click on the map wherever you're looking, and it's going to tell you what kind of rock is present there. So between the LiDAR and the state map here and a little bit of Microsoft Paint, should be able to lay out the processes here that produce that really, really remarkable meander pattern. And good place to start there is with the LiDAR imagery. This isn't the highest resolution LiDAR imagery out there, but it's plenty good to see all those meanders. And the subject of greatest interest here is why they tend to be sort of parallel on their long sides. There's like really, really elegant geometric consistency there. I actually drew one through an old meander cutoff. There's another one right there. So this river does meander like you'd see something like the Mississippi or a big river that's flowing over sediment instead of actual bedrock. But the North Fork Shenandoah here, there's rock in the riverbed, and in fact, if you were to actually zoom in there, we'll clear out that drawing there. If you were to zoom in and take that overlay away, you would actually be able to see ledges of bedrock in the stream bed. We'll be sure to do that with enough time for the screen to catch up here. If you floated this stretch of river, probably in the summertime in low water, I imagine you've probably had some interaction with these ledges of rock. But just about anywhere you go, this being a really nice example, if you look in the riverbed down there, it's rock. There's not some sandy, muddy river bottom. So the river is actually very much cutting into the landscape in this part of the world. So that would set this a little bit apart from a meandering river in say a completely sediment covered area or almost like a delta type of setting as well. So what makes this thing tick? Well, to understand that, you got to think about structural geology here in the Appalachians. We're in the Appalachian Valley and Ridge, and if we look up here to the northeast, stretching way out into the distance, even if we zoom out a little bit here, we can look all the way up there actually into Pennsylvania. And these ridges and valleys, they're controlled by bedrock. This is a place where sedimentary rock layers are folded and stacked on top of each other, and where the hard rocks are exposed, you get ridges. Where the softer rocks are exposed, you get valleys. Of course, the Shenandoah River there is flowing through a valley, but it's not flowing right up the middle of the valley. In fact, if you bring the LiDAR back in, the river is meandering actually right next to the mountain, which is kind of strange. You might expect it to be. It's a pretty good sized river. You need a lot of room for all those meanders. You might think that's going to be right in the middle of the valley there, but it's absolutely stacked up right next to the mountain. So this is where the geologic map comes in, right? So we'll bring our colored geology in there in the background. and start to fade that LiDAR out just a little bit so we can kind of see through. And you may notice already that those meanders are in one particular colored band of rock type there. So we'll draw them back in. It's kind of cool to draw these things out. It's just a really amazing pattern. I don't know. You can go all throughout the valley and ridge, and I promise you, you will not find any that are quite this extreme. Okay, so we're gonna leave those on there. Let's fade our LiDAR the rest of the way out. And at that point, pretty clear that those meanders are sitting right in the Martinsburg Formation. Martinsburg is a shale unit. Talk a lot about shale on this channel. It does a lot in structural geology. It does a lot in landscape evolution. It's a soft, easily eroded rock type. In this particular case, the river has sort of found the shale, the blue rock type to the left of it there. Limestone and dolomite, it still weathers away, but physically, like if you hit it with a hammer or something, it's actually a much harder and stronger rock type. So the river's in it's in the good stuff there. And the fact that you got those big long parallel sides are also it's also a product of bedrock, but it's a little bit different in the sense that it's not entirely a product of the rock type itself. So how does structural geology and various rock detail make this landscape the way that you see it, and why does it and how does it make the river set up like that? Gonna need to draw that one out. So we'll do the Microsoft Paint thing here. Got a new got a new computer running here with a new version of Paint. Probably not going to use it any different from the old one. So we'll take this new Paint for a test drive here, see what we come up with. Hang on just a minute. Okay, so first and foremost here, I think we'll start out with the parallel sides in the river bends there. That's kind of the easier sketch to come up with. Really simple here. We're just going to give ourselves a block that's going to represent a big mass of rock in the Earth's crust. No problem there. And we're going to in this particular case, we're gonna give this one a lot of stress in that direction as indicated by the arrows. And when we squeeze this thing in that fashion, we're going to squeeze it hard enough that it just kind of bows outward there just a little bit. Now, we're not talking about totally changing its shape around, but definitely giving it enough stress to kind of make it bulge like that. So it's enough stress to actually produce a little bit, and when I say little, I mean really little bit of physical change just for the sake of illustrating this. The process we're talking about here in the real world, you're not really talking about big changes to the shape of the rock mass, but it is in fact all about that squeezing, right? So the way we've drawn it here, we squeeze it like that, and it starts to kind of kind of stretch outward like that just a little bit and end up kind of making a bunch of these kind of parallel cracks in it. You can imagine squeezing something in daily life. What would it be? I don't know. Squeeze it hard enough that you actually get it almost to the point of breaking, right? And it starts to crack a little bit. That's kind of what we're looking at there. Say we take that stress away now and let it kind of relax back to where it started. I'm not going to need those bulging sides anymore, so we can go back to the nice straight sides. And once we get everything kind of chilled back out here, okay, we don't need those big open cracks there anymore. So we can erase part of them here, but you're still going to see some expression of that weakening, and we use the term damage in geology. A lot of people have a problem with that in these videos. It doesn't mean a bad thing. It just means that the structural integrity of the rock mass has been changed. Process like this is how you'd form what we call joints, which are basically like fractures in the rock mass. They tend to be nicely parallel because the stress field is what controls their formation. We end up with something like this. Had a river meandering across here. It can do a really nice erosive job along those joints, along those fractures. So Step one there is why do you get the loops looking like that? It's a dominant fracture in the landscape that's a result of the stress that the rocks experience, right? So that's kind of the easy part right there, but that's probably the biggest part of understanding this particular scenario because the meandering isn't unique. It's the parallel sides of the meanders, and they're making use of those structural elements there in the rock mass. Okay, so that was the easy one. Now for the somewhat more challenging one. What's up with that Martinsburg rock formation that kind of traps the river next to the mountain? If you drew yourself sort of a cutaway of this part of the valley and ridge, see something like this, maybe a recognizable profile. If you know this area here, we're actually going all the way over to the Blue Ridge at the right side of the drawing there. I'm gonna color this one in here. I don't know. We need a good landscape color. That'll probably work. Get ourselves some topography drawn here. So first and foremost, we'll get old Massanutten Mountain coming across there. Really cool topographic feature that is very much a geologic feature as well, which we will see in just a moment. But it's a big fold structure in the rock mass. That's why its end sort of closes out like this. So if you approach Massanutten from the north there, you actually kind of drive up inside the valley. Okay, and we have our Blue Ridge topography coming down, which has sort of a different grain, and that's definitely going to be the biggest mountains in this view here. Got another little ridge coming out here that tends to be sort of it's less of a thing topographically compared to Massanutten, and certainly compared to the Blue Ridge. And then we got a few more little ridges out here. We ain't gonna worry too much about them. Okay, so there's the land surface. What's down underneath it? And it's gonna end up with something like this. So Massanutten there is an expression of a fold in the rocks. What we're defining here is probably the most important part. That's going to be the old Martinsburg there. And then down over here has something like that. Okay. Kind of an interesting set of upturn layers there. And then down below all this, actually going to have more of the same, and that's going to be something that will look a lot better in the next image here. In the interest of time, we ain't going to draw the whole thing out here, so we might be able at this point actually to start coloring in some of those layers here. Let's find out. Oops, got an open line in there somewhere. What do we got? Oh my goodness. No, obviously. Got another one right there. Tell you what, long day. Ah, there we go. There's the important part. Martinsburg, more Martinsburg. Gonna need another color here. Gonna need kind of like a teal color or something like that. Let that be our rock that goes up on the Blue Ridge there. And we're sort of excluding a couple of layers here. I'm gonna actually add one more right there. Cool, cool. Even more Martinsburg. Very nice. Okay, so we got this crazy colorful layout of structural geology here. This is sort of I guess sort of the essence of what you're seeing the top of on that geologic map that we look at there in Google Earth. Folded and stacked rock sequences here. You see the same colors again and again. Kind of the calling card, I guess, of the valley and ridge in this part of the world is just taking those same rock layers and just again kind of like stacking them up on top of each other time and again. And again, orange, Martinsburg, that's the important one. Where are you going to put the river in this drawing here? Let's do it. It's coming right down the Martinsburg right there, just like that. Very satisfying to try to draw all those meanders in there. So that's what you got from the structural geology standpoint is the meanders are basically trapped inside wherever that Martinsburg bedrock would be exposed to the surface. So if we drew Martinsburg out on the summit, it'd go, or the surface, excuse me, it looks something like that. And so the river meander belt there is flowing right down that Martinsburg because it's the easiest rock for it to erode into. So like everywhere in the Appalachians, the river has sort of adjusted itself to the landscape and it's trying to find the best path possible. If you added those fractures in and thought about what the rock mass would look like on the whole, it's going to be chopped up with all of those joints like we drew in the first sketch there, broken up like that, and the river is making use of both the soft rock and those joints to kind of meander its way along downhill and ultimately into the Potomac and out into Chesapeake Bay in the Atlantic. Some of the features that you see here, you can see them really well in the LiDAR. When we get back to Google Earth there, we'll take a look at this kind of western edge here. You can actually see almost like a step in the landscape there where you go from the soft Martinsburg shale there into these limestones and dolomites. And the limestone and dolomite actually has kind of a grain to it also. It doesn't really have ridges as such, but you can tell it's a different rock type. So this way of thinking here is pretty much, I don't know, that's just kind of like the valley and ridge everywhere. And the landforms you see are absolutely a direct expression of structural geology. So I drew another one of these out. You'd end up looking at something like this if you went all the way from on the right side there, the Blue Ridge. So we got Blue Ridge over there, and I actually drew in these cool kind of triangular facets there called flat irons. You can actually see those from Interstate 81 if you're riding down 81. It's a pretty prominent landform there, all the way over into West Virginia, which is beyond the real focused folding there in the valley and ridge. But in terms of the good old Shenandoah here, Massanutten, that belt of Martinsburg, and the overall geologic structure that the river's using, that's it right there. It has kind of this faint U shape. It's the Massanutten synclinorium. A syncline or a synclinorium is a concave up fold structure in geology. So it's kind of cool to visualize the overall setup here. A lot of the valley and ridge in this part of the world is it's basically the same rock layer at or near the surface for a huge distance west of Massanutten. By the time you get out into West Virginia, you've got younger rocks, big high plateaus, and sort of a totally different landscape there. Okay, so that's the basic idea of structural geology and how it makes the North Fork and the South Fork to some extent of the Shenandoah River produce those really, really crazy meanders. Looking at the view you got now, we've got Massanutten Mountain right here in the middle. If we take the time and zoom way, way, way out, you can actually capture essentially the entirety of the second picture I showed that was kind of the big overall cross section of the Appalachians in this particular area. Got the Blue Ridge on the right, going all the way out into West Virginia here. This is sort of the main folded part of the valley and ridge. Out in West Virginia, there's much less folding to almost no folding in the rocks. Over there in the Blue Ridge, you've got metamorphic and igneous rocks that are totally different from what you see here along Massanutten. Where's the river? You may remember at this point, but it's kind of meandering like that as we have discussed it. So it's a really cool part of the world to look at structural geology and how it controls the landscape, because what you're looking at here is in its entirety a geologic map. And of course, if you threw West Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania on here, you would see the continuation of these very same patterns. So if you're working in Appalachia and you're dealing with the landscape, basically you're dealing with rocks and structural geology, even if they're covered by soil. Some of the finer structural details talked about in the drawings there, you can see them pretty well with this LiDAR turned on, looking from this direction over there in the limestones and dolomites. Actually see these kind of ribs and parallel lines there that are associated with just a little bit of hardness or weakness difference in the bedrock. And that's pretty distinct from what you've got over here in Martinsburg land where the river is actually doing all the crazy meandering. If we turn the view around a little bit, you can see evidence of those joints and fractures in the landscape beyond the meanders themselves. Of course, the meanders are the best way to see it there. But got one right there, one right there, one right there. If you look, you can see a lot of features that sort of align into general parallelism with the meanders there as well. So in every case here, this landscape is one in which structural geology is controlling how the landscape actually behaves and how the rivers on the landscape behave as well. Why does this thing why does it have to meander like this? What's the purpose of that, naturally speaking? Sort of interesting in this particular case, if the river just followed a straight shot down that zone of Martinsburg exposure, it would be way, way, way too steep for any of the streams around it to keep up in terms of erosion. The river, again, it's very much stuck in that erodible bedrock, so it is using the best bedrock to get downhill. But it's pretty good sized river, and if it were covering the distance that takes 35 miles here, which is like 50 something kilometers, if it were covering that as a straight shot of 10 miles, that's not going to work out with the rest of the landscape. It would erode way too quickly. You'd get a landscape sort of out of balance, and there would have to be changes to sort of mellow things out. So by using that weak rock exclusively, but lengthening itself here, it actually maintains a little bit shallower of a gradient that keeps it in balance with the rest of the landscape while it is very much trapped in that one little belt of rock there. And you see things like this all around the Appalachians where landforms have to do crazy things because they're trapped on the exposure of one type of bedrock that acts totally different from another type of rock right next to it. And it's one thing that really sets the Appalachians apart because of their age, because they are completely controlled in terms of where high points, low points are by rock type. You end up with processes working together that are a little bit distinct from what you might see elsewhere in North America, and really in a lot of places elsewhere around the world. So, hope you enjoyed this tour here of this part of the Shenandoah Valley. I love these Appalachia videos. Seems people like them. A lot of people ask for them. Going to try to do a few more of them here. This one, like I said at the beginning, has been around for quite some time in terms of a question. I wish I'd gotten to it sooner. But if you haven't checked this out before, you can look at it on Google Maps with the terrain function. It tends to look really good there. You can see it in Google Earth as well, or with LiDAR on the national map. Regardless of how you look at it, it's definitely one of like the top 10 patterns to see anywhere in these East Coast landscapes. So I hope you enjoyed this video and hope you check out the next one when it comes along.